Okay, I'm Trudy. I don't know if any of you have read anything I've written. Most of the Anglican Church in Canada doesn't. I'm extremely well read in New Zealand and parts of South Africa and in the southern states. Canada, however, has seen fit not to read my books, so that's okay. I hold no grudge about that. I've been a priest for 40 years. I have 4 middle-aged, getting to be senior citizens kids. Yes, I too am old. I've been kind of a bad girl in the church. We know each other for quite a long time. I think it's good for the church to have people like me in it, even if it is a little bracing. So what we're here, I don't think so. I need to tell. Oh, I've lived in 5 Canadian provinces. So you'll probably think, what's that accent? Well, it depends which word I'm saying, because it depends which province that came from. Anyway, what I want to do this afternoon is take a look at where we're at, partly because you all can see. Now, some of you, how many of you have churches full of kids and you're thriving? No, okay. I wouldn't be here otherwise, would you? You'd be home having fun. You can laugh at me. You can disagree with me, but not till the session's over. And I hope you find something useful for this. One of the books I have on your resource list for the end is a relatively new book by Brian McLaren. Any of you know him as a writer?
Very much so.
He wrote a book called Life After Doom. You should all read it. You should make your congregations read it. It is, I think, one of the most important books written about the church in our time. And he even has study questions, God bless him. Okay, I think part of the problem for us in this era is not just the church. We get in to go, we're shrinking, if I only do a better program, if I invite all the neighborhood kids in, if I juggle during the Eucharist, maybe if I wore grass skirts, maybe that would do it. I don't know. At my age, not likely, but anyway, so none of those things have anything to do with what's happening to us. We are living in the apocalypse. We are living at the end of a civilization. And we can see that if we're brave enough on the news every night. The world is in desperate ecological state. We probably have passed the tipping point, and nobody wants anyone to panic, right? It's like the Anglican Church trained people. Shh, don't say it's over yet. They'll get upset. We're probably past that ecologically. Politically, the disaster we're in. People tell lies, they fight with each other. We now have AI to put our innocent little faces on very bad behaviors. So we know something is terribly wrong in our world, not just in Canada, but in the whole world. I've talked to people from all around the globe, and everybody is wringing their hands. So what I want to talk about really quickly this afternoon is how we got here, how we as the church got here. This is the boring part. If you need a nap, go to sleep. I am never offended by this. I have told this in sermons for years and years. If what you need is a nap, have a nap. I don't mind at all. So, this is a world. How many of you are historians here? How many? Okay, you're going to hate this. because this is 2,000 years in 10 minutes. So we're going really fast here. If we think about the beginning of this, here's this Jewish guy, peasant, probably somewhat literate, oddly enough, although he shouldn't be, who is hanging around between Nazareth and Jerusalem, telling people it's the end of the world, really, folks. The Roman Empire is on the edge of collapse, and you got to figure out a way to cope with this. And you can either cope with it by just giving in, or you can figure out a way to live through this time and help other people live through this time. It was probably a group of peasants. We know that there were women funding the ministry. It was probably mixed men and women at the table, because at a Sabbath meal, the woman lights the candles. When they gathered together, it was probably a Sabbath meal. And the VAS very cheekily uses one of the Sabbath prayers in it that begins, Creator of the universe, as if we wrote it. But it is, in fact, a Jewish prayer. And look up a Shabbat meal. Okay, we're ready to go to Shabbat meals. I'm going to show you one of my very favorite pictures. Look in the up and left-hand corner. There's Jesus saying, you said to him, what? I love that picture. And there's a more modern Shabbat meal in the middle. Over on the right-hand side is a wealthy Jewish family, probably. And those are just the kind. Now, does that look like the Eucharist to you? No. Just asking. It does? Well, you are sure of a different church than I do. I've never seen anybody tell jokes in the middle of the Eucharist, but there you go. What do I know? So the Christian church begins to form from these little gatherings, probably Friday night gatherings. People come together long after Jesus' death, of course, because you don't need to talk about him when he's alive. Now he's dead. You want to remember him. So you come together and you talk about it. And you remember the things he told you and how you can manage in this crazy world with overtaxation, with Romans coming in and conscripting your guys, all the rest of it. How are you going to do it? So their outreach into the community is so significant that these little groups grow astonishingly because they do things because they're Jews still at this point. They go off, they collect abandoned babies, they feed poor people, they remind each other about what the rules are for a Jew, how a Jew is to take care of the stranger in their midst, how a Jew is required to be merciful, how a Jew is to take care of the community in which they live, how they're required to be this and that. And the next thing, they're so good at it that they spread, they become big. And the first stuff that gets written is Paul. Now, almost everybody, and we pretty well inculcate this in our people, is they think the Gospels come first, and they just don't. There's stories that happen much later, and why? That you might have faith. They're stories. Don't think of them as history. Think of them as stories, remembering somebody exceptional, however you want to do that Christology. So here we are with Paul now, though. And let me see, I got to check my slides here, my own slides. So, yeah, let's go to the next slide. So Paul says, see, that's the Council of Jerusalem, by the way, over at the left. So Paul, they no longer fit in a house, so they gather in halls. Now, if you look on the right, that doesn't look so much like what you just saw at the family meal, does it? And Paul gets a little exercise because he says, you know, these are turning into middle-class feasts, and you're all getting together and eating and drinking too much. And like, where are the poor people? Where are the poor people? What's happened? And who else sits and eats at those kind of feasts? Romans, pagans, Gentiles, people who worship Dionysius and Isis and Artemis. Getting a little confusing, isn't it? But Paul also, so Paul is reflecting on this, and he's getting, excuse me, I have a chronically running nose. It's being old. That's why I had to stop celebrating, right? I'm kidding. Anyway, so Paul starts to get concerned about some of the stories about Jesus. So when they ask him questions about resurrection, he says, this is what my mother tried to use to teach sex too. It was just terrible. If you put a seed in the ground, does it look like a tomato plant? No. My mother looked at me and said, now do you understand where babies come from? Yeah. I said, no. I came up with some very inventive questions for her, which she remembered to her dying day. In any case, Paul says, Paul doesn't have anything about a resuscitated corpse. Nothing. What Paul's writing about is how when we're part of this body, we start to see the world differently. And even death is a transforming experience. Think about that next Easter. So Paul has a couple of agendas. One, the norms within the community. Two, starting to talk about things still talking about things in a natural way. He's not actually doing theology yet. He can't. Jews don't do theology. Jews have never done theology. Why don't they do theology? Because it's blasphemy. As soon as you say the name of God, you have lied. You have blasphemed. You cannot name God. You don't know how to do it. So stop it. So Paul is not doing theology. He couldn't. He was a good Jew. He couldn't do it. Instead, he's talking about how God becomes present when people come together. So he's talking about people. So we're starting, but he is asking questions about who can get there. And one of the things we'll notice about this period is women suddenly are on the periphery. All of a sudden, women, instead of lighting candles, being center stage, funding missions, the last we hear of it is some of Paul's, like with Lydia and so on, but you won't hear much of it. It's starting to fade. Women are fading out, and they'll fade even more. Now, I think we're ready for another picture. Keep an eye on that Council of Jerusalem, because you can see already, I love this picture because it shows a split. And already Jewish Christians are starting to have difficulty with the mainstream of Judaism. So they've, all right, we can change now. Let's see, do I want to talk about this yet? Yeah. So, oh, too much. No, maybe not too much. Okay, yeah, go back. So at the Council of Jerusalem, one of the things that happens that becomes an interesting thing is that the rules are relaxed for the Gentiles. Jews have always allowed for adherence, but you could only be born a Jew. You couldn't become a Jew. So you could be an adherent, and they'd be quite happy to have you worship with them. But now, these folks who are becoming more Christian are saying, well, you know, like, we don't want to make these grown men have circumcision. Well, I gotta wonder who was pushing that idea, right? And Peter has his vision of you remember of the great apron in the sky that comes down? I'll get back to him in a minute. He's such a good story. Anyway, but so they agree, yes, okay, you can still do this. They haven't separated yet, but the time of separation is starting to come. The churches now are meeting not in homes, but in larger gatherings, and they're set up basically like the Jewish synagogue. Okay, synagogue, usually about 23 men. In the case of the Jewish Christian groups, probably only about 8 or 10 men. And so but we notice they're starting to call each other by different names. The disciples, whoever those are at this point in time, start to become called bishops, which is a word which really means overseers. And they're now the truth checkers. They're now the ones saying, yes, that's okay, you can say that, or no, you can't say that anymore. This has never happened before. This is a new thing for these people. In Judaism, truth is what happens at the table. In Judaism, people talk about all the time. It's not whether it's right or wrong, it's what we're talking about that brings God into our midst. So it's not a question of doctrine. There's no doctrine in Judaism. But now you see we're starting to get doctrine, because there are right things to say and wrong things to say. And you'll hear it. You can hear the tension in the scriptures about what's okay to do, what's not okay to do, what's okay to say about the resurrection, what's not okay. Resurrection, remember, is a really big thing. If you notice, there's very little incarnation talk. Nobody's much interested in that. It's all about resurrection and life after death. So Ignatius of Antioch in 103 says there shall be a single bishop over all of Jerusalem. Okay, that's news, because not Judaism, right? Judaism has little synagogues all over the place, a temple where there's big fancy stuff done. but not one person over everyone. That's a new thing. So bishops in the second century are also become defined as the only clergy who can ordain to the presbyteric priests or to the diaconate, and they're the only people to whom this right is entrusted. And a priest can lay hands on to bless you. Again, a new thing. In Judaism, everybody blesses everyone. Mothers and fathers bless their children, they bless each other. Strangers on the street bless each other. Everybody can give each other a blessing. Not in this new hierarchy. Suddenly, blessing becomes limited. I remember in the questions of ordination around gay people in the Anglican Church, I finally got sick at one, and I said, look, we can bless a brass plaque. I just don't get it. I don't get oh no, it was, the marriage of gay people. I said, I don't get it. We can bless a brass plaque, but we can't bless a loving union. Just explain this to me. Yeah, it might have something to do with me being a lesbian, but not a whole lot. I think I'd have found it anyway. I hope so. Anyway, so we're ready for slide 4. So, persecutions start. Why? Because, and really the Christians and Jews kind of set each other up here. Because the Christians would say, we put in that sign, we dislike that because that's a modern day terrorist, but that's a Roman soldier terrorizing people coming out of the temple. See, lost my train of thought there, it'll come back to me. Oh, so Jews say, it's those Christians. Have you heard what they do in their liturgies? They talk about killing someone and eating them. Christians say about Jews, they kill babies, They go collect them off the mountainside and they kill them. In fact, Jews did collect babies off the mountainside to take care of them. It's a mitzvah, a blessing. You go collect orphan children. And if we think about the Eucharist, well, you can hear how that rumor might have developed. So they the split between Christianity and Judaism becomes more profound and more serious in terms of what's going to happen in colonial history. The faith has become far less Jewish. Okay, we can go to the next one. Far less Jewish because there's lots of pagans now involved, so-called pagans, just means people of the land, that word, by the way. So up in the corner here, we have Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus was the god of war. Somewhere in there we have Mithras. Oh, right there, Mithras killing a bull. Have any of you seen the Mithras ritual? You drink the blood of the bull and you become one with the god of war. It sounds exactly like our words for the Eucharist. Not sort of like, exactly like. You can see how people might get confused. And down there in the middle, I think that might be Artemis. In any case, because Jews are fading from Christian consciousness at this point, these people come from somewhere and have other practices, right? And they bring those practices with them. Now, don't get all shocked about that. You all have Christmas trees, I'm sure, in church on Sunday, at Christmas. And you can look around. Don't you have flags in church? You can go on. You can look around our little churches and you can see, oh yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree even now. So they bring, and that is in fact one of the ways Christianity spreads. It assimilates. It attempted to assimilate Celtic spirituality, although not with as great a success as they might have hoped. So as Christianity spreads, it just gobbles up more religions and folds them in, which makes a bit of a mess of our original ideas and is really hard on the other religions. So Tertullian himself, our famous fellow who said may as well ordain a dog as a woman. Okay, Tertullian, I know you've been dead for thousands of years, but I still have to get it in. Yeah, I know every time I say something like that, I sort of hear him say, oh, give me a break. He himself talks about the problems with this. And we can hear one of my very favorite Easter hymns is Thine is the Glory, Risen Conquering Son. Sounds a lot more like the War God to me. Or, now here's another lovely one that will go to our colonial input that we sing still. The day thou gavest, Lord, has ended, and o'er each continent and island, the faith will just roll, assimilating you all until Christianity is totally victorious over the whole earth. Oh, I'm sure people would love to hear us sing that. Yes, well, that's the beginning of all that. We need to know this because we can't fix the stage of the church until we undo colonialism. Colonialism is our biggest problem, and we are all carrying it. You, me, everyone. I went back through this and caught myself in like at least 5 places because it's ingrained in us. So around the 4th century, first of all, Constantine had maybe his vision and maybe he really became a Christian, except for that little war thing and a little bit of womanizing. And aside from a few of those little details, he was sort of a Christian. He got baptized anyway. And makes an edict to say, okay, you can stop killing Christians now. Now you could see why Christians wouldn't argue with this, right? Okay, he's not going to kill us anymore. Sounds pretty good to me. So they say, okay, and then we have the infamous Council of Nicaea, at which a whole lot of people agree to a whole lot of things that nobody to this day understands. Now, I'll tell you an interesting experiment you can do if you like. I've done it in almost every church I've been in, just for fun, for grins. So what you say is you tell them you are going to recite the Nicene Creed. And they can chime in with every phrase they believe in and would be willing to stake their life on. Its silence is thunderous. Thunderous. Oh, and understand. And understand. Good. I don't get it either. And I've been saying this nonsense for 40 years. What happens in this period, too, is there's a kind of normalizing. This is a period when doctrine is created. So, very God of very God, begotten, not made, whatever the hell that means. I mean, think about it for a minute. It's ridiculous. You like it? Okay, you can keep it then. I think it's ridiculous. I just don't even bother to say it anymore. And somebody said to me, why don't you say it? And I said, because I don't get it quite. I mean, I know what the words mean and all that, but really? We're going to stand and you know, everybody stands at military precision for it too. I want you to think about Jesus doing this. I want you to think about Jesus at the table looking at you doing this. I'm going to say, what? About me? Okay, so the other thing that happens is because we get rules about what you can say and what you can think, more significantly about what you may think, is creative thinking about anything becomes heresy. Now, I hope you all want to be heretics when you grow up. It's the best spiritual path because it opens new doors for the Holy Spirit to come in for you. But if you don't like it, you can still be doctrinal. It's okay. So it doesn't matter. At the end, we're all going to die anyway. So, just a fact. So this becomes and I want you to think about this because it's a really important question. All of a sudden, when we get to a different language group, we will get the word belief. And that's what's starting here. The idea of belief, not faith, but belief. In Greek and Hebrew, you can't say belief. You can only say, I trust in this, I would support this, I will back this. You can't say you believe anything, really. That's a much later set of ideas. I personally think it's been really harmful to Christianity because we ask people to believe things instead of having faith in them. Big difference. So the gathered community, whose job is, oh, yes, we should change. Oh, yeah. Oh, I want to say this because it just amuses me. That's a church council on the left, and on the right is the Roman Senate.
Yeah.
You know, most of the ecclesiastical garments you wear are Roman senatorial clothes for one occasion or another, right? Nothing to do with Judaism. Absolutely nothing to. They're not prayer shawls. They're nothing. The Roman stoles of authority.
Yeah.
They give you power over the people sitting in the pews. Sounds so little, nobody believes me anyway. But that is an interesting and provocative look, isn't it? I think that's supposed to be the Council of Nicaea on the left. I've kind of forgotten this. But that is definitely the Roman Senate on the right. Okay, next one. So the gathered community oh yes. I just want to say, la plus ça change. Sorry, bishops, I can't resist. There's a medieval picture of bishops, and there's 21st century picture of bishops.
Why don't I can't get my mother with?
It just amuses me. See, they've still got they've got a cross, which we like to say is the shepherd's cross, but it also is one of the symbols of authority. They've got crowns. They've got rings. When I was ordained, we still kissed bishops' rings, if you can believe it. I made too many rude jokes about that. They wouldn't let me do it anymore. Anyway, so that's just so you can see that that's over 1,000 years apart. We at least could update, I think, our fashion sense. One time I terrifyingly almost became a bishop, and all I could think of the night before, I thought, oh, please no. I can't wear one. So in my I dreamt I had a little tiara and everything was looking good, and I was all ready to walk out of the procession. So I realized I only had underwear on. I thought, oh dear, I just can't be a bishop. Of course I wasn't, thank goodness. It was a message from the angels. Relax, sleep. So how did we learn colonial thinking? There's some basic characteristics of could you change that? I've got to find.
Go ahead or go?
Go ahead, Mike. Okay, I'm going to read this because you can't really see it.
This one?
Yeah. Here it says, the slide on the left says, with the planet on the brink of environmental collapse, it seems only reasonable to kill each other over unprovable dogma. And the one on the left says, you'll love this. It's swarthy yet munificent, didactic and gregarious with hints of dogma. So doctrine now becomes dogma too. Not only is it doctrine in our era, it's dogma. So try changing anything. Try saying something about, well, maybe you should look at just changing marriage altogether. Well, there's doctrine about Christian marriage. No, there's not. There is not. There is practice. Try any of these things. It's tons of fun. Try it. It's tons of fun. Anyway, so colonial thinking is the belief that it's acceptable to conquer other people or other ideas and make them obey you. And that when you've conquered them, because you've been able to conquer them, even if you did it through trickery, as the European colonialists discovered coming to North America, even if it's through trickery, you must be better than the people you've conquered. And that means you can make them talk like you, dress like you, think like you. We do it all the time. For a while, I worked with people on social assistance, mums in particular. And the thing we don't know about a lot of folks on social assistance is they have a different kind of social network. They have a different kind of social, nothing wrong with it. It's just not ours. But we think, because we have money, ours is better, right? Similarly, for a while I worked with ex-cons, which is what gave me the potty mouth. I blame them entirely for this. And I discovered amongst people who are habitual criminals, there's a different social system. They work differently. So I'd say, John, I heard you were going in the tank again. Why is that? Well, Trudy, it was October, and at least you get 3 squares a day.
Yeah.
He says, it's not so bad. I know all the guards. They know me. You have a great time. Better than being on the street, though, isn't it? Different set of values and cultural norms. But colonial thinking says that's bad. instead of saying that's a different social system. That's what colonial thinking does. It sets people apart into people who are right and the people who are wrong. The people who have answers and the people who work together in community just to live. It's a really serious problem for the whole world and for the church. Unless we get over some of this colonial thinking, it's the end for us. Those who resist colonial thinking and actions are seen to be less human, more criminal, less worthy. Take a look at who is incarcerated, and that will tell you everything you need to know. Colonialism creates systems of rewards and punishments. If you're very good, you will go to heaven when you die. But if you have been fooling around, no guarantees you might be going to the other place. When my younger son had cerebral aneurysm, and it was emergency surgery, and we were not at all convinced he was coming out of it. And someone who best remain nameless said to me, well, it's a good thing he's got you as the mother, because I guess you're praying for him now. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I wouldn't want him to go to the other place. And I said, well, I don't believe in it. So he's not going anywhere. I said, he might die, but he's not going anywhere. He'll just be transformed. I said, I think you got to believe in heaven and hell. And I just don't. It's ridiculous. It's all it is a social control system. It's nonsense. Do you know where, what is that place they always like to say they're gonna send people to?
Purgatory from?
No, the one it's the garbage dump outside Jerusalem anyway.
Oh, Hannah or something.
Gehenna.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's a garbage dump.
Yeah.
What Jesus is basically saying is you're a bunch of trash, right? You're a bunch of trash and you deserve to get burned up in your silly ideas too. He's not talking about hell. He is not talking about hell. Nonsense. But we have woven these things into a package for social control. If you have sex before you're married, dangerous. Could go to hell. Better get married quick and fix that.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I gotta tell you, Bishop, you're not the only one. There's a good reason I don't believe in heaven and hell. I want you to think really hard about how this kind of thinking interferes with compassion, with community. As a priest, I cannot tell you how many people, well, I'm also ready to cry about, have walked into my office to say, I'd really like to come to church, but if you only knew what I was really like. That's what did I do? Because I'm just like you. Because it's the nature of being human, right? I'd come to church, except I don't know if I have enough money to put on the plate. I know you expect that. I'd come to church, except I don't have the right clothes. I'd come to church, except you don't like people like me. And sometimes they're right. I was telling Joanne earlier about a sermon I heard, in which first of all, I thought things were going well, that everybody was this person said, well, heaven's just like this airplane. Everybody who gets on the airplane arrives at the destination. It's just the Christians, have the first class tickets. And who are the Christians? They're usually white men. Now, I'm not white, I'm not a man, and I'm short. There's some real problems with this. So colonialism creates insiders and outsiders, right? And you hear the pain of that all the time. I remember one woman, I asked if she would come on Altar Guild because I was desperate for because I'm terrible at it. I was desperate for some help. And she said, well, I can't, Trudy. And I said, why not? Well, she said, people like me aren't invited to be on Altar Guild. Why? One of my favorite stories about my mother, there's two stories about my mother, who was one of the most wonderful people in the world. This day, the priest came in and she was ironing the linens. And he said, oh, well, Gertie, you don't have any gloves on. She said, well, how would you like your linens ironed? Never asked her again. So one of the things we do, we put obedience instead of solidarity. There's obedience. So you do it because you're supposed to, not because you think it's right, not because you think it's good. That's schoolyard behavior, right? Don't talk to that kid. Let's make up a story about him. Let's say he picks his nose. Okay, none of us can play with him now. I had a recent experience of colonialism in this lovely little forest community where we live. All lovely people, lots of trees around us. And one of the women had a lovely idea that she would invite, all the women over 50 were perhaps lonely and isolated. So she would create a group, which she did. And they all got together and the group grew and grew. And finally she decided you could only be part of the group if you met certain criteria. Then they decided you could only be part of the group if you'd sign a waiver, so that if you got hurt on their property, you wouldn't sue them. Then they decided, you hear how this is going, just went on and on. Then they were going to draw some kind of constitution. This is because a bunch of women wanted to drink in the afternoon. I mean, really, really. From a bunch of women who wanted to drink in the afternoon, we now have this whole deal. Needless to say, they didn't bother to invite me, really. I'm always so relieved when people get it right away. Okay, let's change slides. So this jewel, oh, this is another one. You can just leave that up there. You don't need to look at it for a minute, though, because I want you to do something else. I want you to think about how loaded our worship and our practice is as Christians. And there's 3 areas I'm going to think about this and ask you to talk to each other. And maybe you Zoom, are the Zoom people in a chat room?
Yeah, but we can put them.
Okay. Do you Zoom people want to be in a chat room so you can talk to each other? Well, we're
Sure.
sending you there anyway.
Sure.
Okay. So the first is, I'm going to do the first one is baptism. I want you to remember just this little fact. Jesus doesn't baptize anyone. He doesn't tell anyone to be baptized, except to be baptized with the fire with which he will be baptized. Are you ready for that? He says to the disciples. Doesn't baptize anyone. That's an invention of the church. Now, Jews would have a mikvah in their house if they were wealthy, so they could do their own ritual bathing in their house. And if you were poor, you went down to the river and did your ritual cleansing. There is no evidence until the church comes along of baptism. But what have we done with that? I was told I couldn't have a warden if he wasn't baptized, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You all have these stories. So that's one. So think about what baptism is for us. And I want you to think about it in terms of what kind of colonial thinking is, what kind of either or thinking goes into this. Secondly, think about the Eucharist. I remember this one woman who was quite indignant that I handed out communion to whoever held their hands out. She said, first of all, you can give it to children. She said, or there's some, well, she said, I'm saying cognitively impaired, but she has a different word for it. She said, you give it to anyone. Yeah. And she said, do you think they understand? I said, well, I don't know about that. I said, could you explain to me how you understand the Eucharist? Well, all of a sudden everybody could come. Yeah. But I want you to think about this. Are these open gate? Do we have gates to open or gates to close? That's not the only thing about the Eucharist. Who can touch the elements? Who can give a communion? Mm-hmm. And even what the elements are. There was a famous Indonesian feminist theologian who said, well, look, what is indigenous for us is bread, fruit, and lime juice. Why can't we have that? This is just what Jesus had as his peasant meal. No, the world order churches said, no, 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 no. The late Bishop Tim Matthews told me one time, he was a wonderful man. He told me one time he was way up north and he was to bring communion to this woman. And he looked around, no bread, nothing in the house. And he had left his kit at home. So he celebrated with Pepsi and cornflakes. Oh. Was he wrong? Was it communion? Ask. A lot of people tell you it was very wrong. He swore me to secrecy, but he's dead now. Yeah.
You can tell a bad apple when you saw it.
So, I mean, I want you to think about this. It is not uncommon in Central America, in parts of Central America, to celebrate with Coca-Cola and tortillas. It is not uncommon. But you'll hear church movement saying, oh, you have to have red wine. It's got to look like blood. Oh, good. That's great. I'm really glad about that. You can, well, in fact, the Roman Church has just recently said you can't, oh no, it's the Church of England has just recently said you can't celebrate with gluten-free bread. It has to have gluten in it, or it can't be the body of Jesus. Well, I was kind of glad about that myself, but I have a different kind of set of imagery for myself about this, but so you can see how it's impinging on us, this kind of only one way to think about something. And finally, ordination. Young man comes up to Jesus. He says, good master. Jesus says, only God is good. Meaning, stop calling me God. Only God is good. Secondly, call no one father except your Father who is in heaven. So you fathers and mothers, you got some splaining to do. You better hope there's no heaven and hell too. It's pretty clear to me. The story of the woman who anoints Jesus. Her story will be told whenever, I don't think I've ever seen it in the Eucharistic liturgy, except mine, the one I write. Anyway, okay, so here's the questions. An ordination. I have one last thing, because I love this story. When I was at ACPO, and I failed, I'm proud to say the first time around, I'm in a league with a whole lot of people I admire. We all failed the first time around, because we hadn't learned the system yet. And I was naive. Anyway, they said to me, one of the assessors said to me, you look like a happy person. Are you a happy person? I thought, well, this is a trick question. Oh my God, this is a trick question. If I say no, they'll tell me I need therapy. If I say yes, they'll say, what have you got to be happy about? So I thought, well, I said, I'm not an idiot. I'm happy when I'm happy. He said, well, I have one thing to tell you, young lady. The ministry is not happy. You will not be happy. There is no room for happy in the ministry. You think that would have turned me off?
We have someone here going to ACPO.
I'm giving you some lines. Hey, see me later. I'll give you a checkbook. And the second thing was a young man I'd been mentoring, and he went to ACPO. And one of the assessors had noticed he wasn't eating meat. And they said to him, you're a vegetarian. He said, yes, I am. So they explained to him in his session that when Peter brought down the tent, that meant we should all be omnivores. And vegetarians were inappropriate for the Anglican priesthood.
What?
He didn't get through and he gave up that time. He didn't come back. But, who says this? Who makes up this nonsense? That's colonial thinking. Somebody has power over you and tells you, this is how you must think. And I want you to think how often those of us who are priests do it in our parishes all the time. And I hate it that I do that. But I'm a product of this culture, and so I do it too. Finally, last story I'm going to leave you. Oh, no, I'm not going to tell that story now. Okay, so I might tell you later. It's a good one. Anyway, so here's what I want you to think about. Think about ordination, baptism, Eucharist, and ask yourself how your understanding fits with the table fellowship of Jesus. Who's at your table? How do they get to your table? Where is your table? Is your table somewhere that people, ordinary folks, can get to?
Mhm.
How many of you are in dioceses that don't allow picnic Eucharists?
Don't know why.
Don't allow picnic Eucharists. I know there's a few across Canada not allowed to have a picnic
I don't
Eucharist.
know
You
what
mean
that
like
means.
outside?
Yeah,
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of a picnic Eucharist?
I've done it.
I bet you it's on the back of a skidoo. No,
Yeah,
seriously.
exactly.
In the military.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, see, this is what I mean. There's only one place to have the Eucharist, right? Behind an altar that looks about as much like a table as my seating tray does.
Mhm.
Behind a table, well taken care of so that nobody can get close to you. And who are you supposed to look like when you're doing this? Here's how I've made sense of it for myself. I say, well, okay, I'm not pretending to be Jesus. I'm pretending I'm welcoming the whole world. You do what you have to do, right? So I want you to ask yourself, which of these, baptism, Eucharist, and ordination, do you hear colonial echoes in? And, or assimilation echo is the same thing. Colonialism is about assimilation, always. And what makes you uncomfortable about them? You can choose anything about this, and you can talk to each other for a while. Do you understand the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What was interesting about this for you? What was interesting? What was boring? No, I don't hear what's boring, I don't care. Were there any surprises for you in this? Say more?
I can't even talk. Seriously, I mean, my whole life has been about, I didn't even realize it was colonialism, not patriarchism or, you know, just people's ideas and beliefs. And I mean, I just became quieter and quieter in those kind of environments. And this just really
You know,
resonated.
there's a wonderful feminist song called, it goes, sometimes I wish my eyes hadn't been opened. And sometimes it's, if you think,
The script, is that one that I'm supposed to be? No.
no.
Oh, oops. I sent you the wrong document. Don't open that.
Well, you can open it if you like, it's just my cheat sheet. So here's
Did
the
you
thing
see it
about
in the
this.
Especially as it's
People
in-
who think this is easy haven't divested themselves of any colonial thinking. Because it hurts. It's the way we were brought up. It's how we were taught to think. Those of us women who are victims of it, for heaven's sakes. Indigenous people who've experienced it. We can all still be in denial about it because it hurts to take it off.
Right.
And it hurts to think of yourself as having colonial thinking. It hurts because none of us want to be that person.
Mhm.
None of us want to be the oppressor, right? We all want to be the nice guy.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Well, in our diocese, we've become intentional, very intentional about sitting at the feet of Indigenous people and say, teach us.
Brian
When
Clarence
our
is in
national archbishop came to visit us,
Yeah.
we had a ceremony in which I gave him my staff.
Mhm.
He took my crozier as a sign of us relinquishing our authority.
Wow, how powerful, how
Yeah.
wonderful.
And for us, it was important to do that, right? And so we can talk about what we should do, but we need to do it too.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly, we need to do it.
Yes.
That's
So
what we're
we're-
gonna do next.
We're also in a process of saying to them, when you're ready, Central Newfoundland must be in a companion diocese relationship with ASAP.
Mhm.
But we're waiting for them to teach us how that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Right, and our relationships are growing very authentic. So, and we become aware, you know, of how important it is to recognize that we are settlers and we are colonialists, right? And not just in Canada, I'll start talking about Gaza in a moment, but I don't want to be rude. I'll behave myself when it comes to that. But
No,
you're
No,
talking
after
about
it's
rank
me.
colonialism, which is being supported by rank colonialism
Yeah.
throughout the world, and people are dying.
Yeah.
By the time we finish here today, a lot of people will have died.
yeah, there are people starving all over the world because of colonialism.
Absolutely.
Unnecessarily starving to death.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, if you've ever been in any city in Canada, there is no reason in a city, in a country as wealthy as Canada, to have absolutely anyone hungry or living on the street.
No
There's no
reason.
excuse for it. There's just no excuse for it.
Mhm.
It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's a different rant. That's not this one. I have different rants. I can do, you know.
Me
You imagine
too.
your role, like a true Newfoundland?
Yeah.
I hope they all do. I hope we all do, right?
I hope so too. Okay, anybody else want to talk about their surprises? You can talk to me later. If anybody else want to talk about their surprise, I want to make sure if any of this has hurt you or shocked you, you find someone to talk to before you leave here today.
Yeah.
I will help you do that if you want to. But it's really important that you honor your own pain, because your pain means you got it. It means you got it. All right, so where do we go from here? What are those things in the faith that are so important to us that we don't want to lose, that we want to rethink them? For example, I'll tell you, the resurrection is such an important concept for me that I read quantum physics to understand it. I do all kinds of things because I think it's one of Jesus' big teaching that we messed up into having tea with Granny. And that has nothing to do with true resurrection in my idea. You don't have to agree. Remember, you don't have to agree with me. I don't care. It's all right. All of us come to the table with different agendas. I want to ask you, what do you think we need the church for anyway? Like, if we're not teaching doctrine, what do we need it for? Relationships. Don't you have relationships outside of church? Honey, I gotta give you a date. We need it for relationships, really?
I think we needed to take on some of the larger things, because we can gather as community.
But why Christians?
But not necessarily Christians, but to my mind, anyone coming to the church anyway, so, whatever that might be, so I think we need a sense of, think about it more specifically in terms of this since November till now, and turning all of that sense that we can be powerless alone. And I think one of the very few things that's left for very small number of people in society, that is a place where they can come to be with more than their friends or families, is something like that thing that we call church. So I think that's important.
It has to be a verb, not a noun, not a fixture that dominates and controls.
Okay. So, if it's to transmit the stories, then I want you to remember something. We keep forgetting that Jesus is Jewish. Are Jehovah's Witnesses on the table?
No.
Okay.
That I'm not aware of.
Is there a Jehovah's Witness? I'm going to say something that you might find insulting. And I'm
No,
sorry.
well, it's my mother.
Okay.
She's
well,
blunt.
These folks, these very well-meaning folk, came to our house when we were living outside Vancouver, and they got real excited when they heard I was an Anglican priest, because they knew I'd understand. And so they were quoting a variety of Bible passages and this and that. What I really want to do is finish weeding my front garden. And so, although I understood their urgency, I had an urgency of my own, so I was not being as polite as I should have. Anyway, in any case, finally they said something, and I said to them, well, Jesus was a Jew anyway. I said, okay, that's it. We're finished here, and left. And I thought, well, I could have said that 20 minutes ago. Why was that an offensive thing to say? Because what goes with colonialism? I wanted you to think about the amount of anti-Semitism in Christian literature and in our Eucharistic liturgy. It's everywhere. Jesus brought us out of death into life, out of error into truth. What, all the Jews for the thousands of years before were just wrong? Until this one Jewish kid? Oh, it's Jesus after all. See what I mean? It's so woven into our prejudices. But here's a Jewish way to think about some of this. For Jews, because this deals with sort of the inerrancy of the Bible. We know what I might think about that, don't we? For Jews, Torah is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's where Paul steals the phrase from. Torah is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. What he doesn't add is the rest of the rabbinical sentence, which is, but the people in every generation hear it differently. None of us are going to get the truth. I mean, if you think you have the truth, then I'm really impressed, and I will come worship at your altar, because I've never met a human being who could hold that much, but you know, the only people I've never thought they had the truth generally were not at the A&W. They were somewhere else with a different kind of liquid, thinking they had the truth. So, I mean, I think we hold that for ourselves as a piece of criteria, and we say Torah is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but we hear it in this time, or we hear it from this lens. We hear it because we're an immigrant to this country, and we hear it Torah in that way. We hear it because we're a woman. We hear it because we live on the street. We hear it because we're comfortable and middle class, and we pass as white, or we are white, or in Anne's case, a long history of Irish people. She can't help it. It's in her blood. So what's the most important thing in this age? What is the thing that Torah wants to teach us in this age? We have colonial doctrine, we have the stories of and about Jesus, and we have the practice. We have centuries of knowing how to build community. Those are the things we have. I think what I hear people saying, not just young people, we always say it's all the young people. Well, you know, they all come to church willy-nilly, whether they want to or not. So all of us of every age, it matters. Our world is concerned with justice. I think everybody in this room is worried about justice. I don't know how you can be alive today and not care about justice. Justice in our prisons, justice on the street, justice, justice, justice. I think our world is concerned about belonging. I think people need to feel a sense of belonging. And I'm going to tell you a story right now. Of course I am. My father's born at the table of the general store. What do you expect? So this Lutheran guy came to me again at West. And it was one of bishops. You will understand the anxiety you might have had I been your priest in this situation. Anyway, so he came to me, he said, Trudy, you know, he said, I like coming to church here, and I kind of like your sermons and everything, but I got to tell you the truth about something. He said, I don't believe any of this stuff. I said, so? He said, I just don't believe it. And I said, so what are you telling me? He said, I'm not sure if I should keep on coming here. I said, well, do you want to keep on coming here? Yeah, he said. Yeah, he said, can I still take communion? I said, sure. Tell me a bit about what it means to you. He said, well, it means I'm connected to everyone. I said, that's it. That's Eucharistic theology. You're fine. As far as I know, you know, it doesn't matter how many degrees I get. I don't know any more than I knew the first time around. Anyway, so he said, well, okay. Well, he said, I want to get involved in some things. So he got involved in a couple of the different mission projects we had going on. And one thing came to another. And in Lent, he came to me and said, Trudy, I think I want to be baptized. I said, oh, good Lord, why? I said, you don't believe in any of this stuff. Well, he said, I'm getting a feeling, you know, I'm getting a feeling for it. He said, I don't know about this Jesus guy, so I want to be like him. I want to be part of his club. I said, okay, that's a good enough reason to be baptized. He's baptized. Then, the next thing I know, do any of you know who Cynthia Bergeron is? The spiritual team. What did I say? Bergeron. Yeah, I always say her name wrong. It should be Bergeron. She's got the wrong. Bergeron. Anyway, he went to study with her for 6 months. Came back and he said, I think I want to be a deacon. Now, this is in about a 16-month period. So we were hosting, our church was hosting what it means to be faithful people in an interfaith context. And we were talking about belonging before belief, and we had various guest speakers. And the bishop was going to be there to support us. And so my buddy stands up, people are talking about this thing and the next thing, and my buddy stands up and he says, well, he said, I'm a Christian, but it's all because of that woman. And he points at me and I think, oh boy, oh boy. And he said, because she told me to come here, and she told me if Jesus wanted me, he'd find me, and he did. But I wasn't baptized. I took communion before I was baptized. She made me part of the community before I believed anything.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm watching the bishop have a kind of meltdown about he looks over at me, smiled weakly. He said after, so he said, Trudy, you know, you really make me nervous. I love the guy, but it's funny. Okay, so that's an example of belonging before belief. I think if we operate on that, on belonging before belief, we'd be in a very different position.
Yeah.
Here's the next thing, tolerance. And I think we have to actively go after tolerance in our communities. I am really sick, at least from an Anglican perspective, I am really sick of hearing Anglicans be racist, sexist, classist. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it. Partly we have a mixed racial family, so when we come to church, it's fairly evident who they've been offending. We were trying to get one of my nieces to marry a Middle Eastern guy because we have no Middle Easterners in there. Everything else, but no Middle Easterners. It's really a tragedy. Anyway, but I don't want them to go to a church where people are going to look at them badly because of the color of their skin or because of their lifestyle choices or because they discovered they were trans. I don't want to be in that kind of community. And I think that most other modern people don't either. And finally, well, two finallys. One is an ecological question. I want churches to care about the environment, to understand that this isn't ours. We don't own this. We're guests. Most of us will only last a few decades on it. If we're really lucky, those are naughty, maybe 80 or 90. But we're guests. And we have to take care of this beautiful place we live. And I think the other point of the church, from my perspective, is to show people how to liberate themselves. I think people are so messed up with shame and fear and longing that they can't see straight, they can't think straight. And that's what Jesus did, right? Hey, Zacchaeus! Oh, you silly fart, come down here. You're having dinner at my house today. Come on, get along. Not, I have a message for you. I have a tract. So I'm going to show you some slides now. This first one is St. Benedict's table. This is a fascinating experiment. Is that a Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Do you know it?
Yeah.
Have you been there?
I played guitar with him.
Hell yeah. So Jamie started out, the church was dying, and you can add to this, you probably know better than I do. Jamie, the church was dying, so he gathered all the parishioners, and they went out for dinner one night and said, what do we really need to be ourselves? It's like they didn't really need a building. So they just started inviting people for dinner. And they had nice dinners, like really good food, not some, back door.
Really good.
No, they had nice dinners. They invite people, and they invite more people. And now they have this big thriving church. They call themselves a non-doctrinal church because they tell the stories of Jesus and they tell the stories of Hebrew scriptures. There are kids whizzing about. And what it looks like, well, they call it open table, and it is. It's open table, it's open theologically, it's open to anyone who wants to come, and all of a sudden they're full. Isn't that amazing? Next slide, please.
He just likes that slide, apparently.
Oh, there we are. This is the Wild Church Network. I have a friend who despairs of church. She came late to the faith and left. She stuck around. Well, we had her to prop her up, but she's finding it a little more challenging now that she's encountered doctrine. Anyway, but in this movement, there are a couple of wild churches. in Halifax area. You said there's one?
Yeah, Reverend James, our chaplain, does them. Yeah.
So you can,
Susan.
it's very
Susan.
easy to develop. You just go on the network. It doesn't mean, now I want to be clear about this. This doesn't mean you have to toss your whole church practice into the garbage bin. But you can do parallel things, right? Because I gotta tell you, I said this, I was in this little, doing an intro in this little tragic place where the people didn't want to change because they've been that way for the last 300 years. They didn't see why anybody needed them changed. I said, well, the fact of the matter is, I'm part of the youth group here and I'm almost 80 years old. So, and I said, there's not going to be anybody to pay the bills very soon. I said, so regardless, we do nothing, doesn't matter, coast to coast. I said, or you could decide you have a mission. Now, some of them decided that and they're off doing a new thing. And some of them are just gradually dying in the pew. And that's okay. So you're kind to those people who are dying in the pew. You give them palliative care. You look after them. But you don't spend a lot of energy on them. You spend the energy helping some parallel things happen. Because the people who come out of that have experience and insight. And you can train them in how to do wild churches. Okay, next one. This is one of my favorites. This is a completely secular, I was saying what you said, Carol. This is a completely secular movement that started, I think, in PEI. It's called the Happy Community Project. It was a granddad and a community psychologist. And they were really tired with their communities being so sick and miserable. So they started figuring out how to do how to recreate community. They are now going all over the place, doing happy community projects. What's most shameful is that it wasn't a church doing it. How come they figured it out? Because that's what Jesus told us to do. Isn't that what Jesus told us to do? They're singing our song, folks. So the good news, though, is you could have them into your community and you could look good doing it. So I give you these three things to show you the kind of things that are happening. I know there's another church whose community is in a recovery center. And people leave the recovery center, they get well, they go away, and then they come back to help the other addicts. And it's a burgeoning community. So there are lots of things that can be done everywhere. But it depends what your focus is. If your focus is if your focus is the sanctuary, and it's only at that east end of the building, if your sanctuary isn't out there under the trees, if your sanctuary isn't the little kids holding out their hands for communion, whether they know what it is or not. I usually have, Bishop, you'll need to close your ears for this one too. I usually have some of those little goldfish, and that's what I consecrate for the kids. They have gluten in them.
If you come tonight, we'll give you a gluten-free wafer.
Anyway, but
No, give her a goldfish.
I have to go get there.
yeah. Okay, so you see what I'm saying? There's lots of room. Now, what I want you to imagine is what you could do in your area. What could you do? And who do you need to help you? Who would you call? Are you just going to call the church people? Who else are you going to call? Anne could tell you, if you hang around after, she could tell you she got a whole food network going in this little community. How many people? 800 people you were feeding during COVID? 800 every week. A lot of those people who were helpers stayed to join the church because they didn't know the church would actually give a flying patootie.
Yeah.
They stayed. They thought, oh, is that what the church? Oh, okay, all right. And they're still doing 100 meals a week? 200 a week still. She did that by going, and I'm going to speak for you, okay? She did that by calling by getting other clergy involved from other denominations. She did it by talking to grocery stores.
And we did a secular stewardship campaign.
And they did a secular stewardship. Do you want to say something else?
Well, we did a stewardship campaign to the entire community rather than to the church. And so we went to the legal clinics and we went to the health clinics and we went to all of those partners who were out there and said, give us money. And we will do this work.
And they did.
And welcome your folks to work with us.
And they did. Mostly if you ask people for money, they'll give it to you. Now, they're not gonna give it to you for terrazzo flooring in the sanctuary. Although I was an intern, one church that had it. And I said, you should sell that and give it to the poor. Okay, so do you understand your little task now? Your little task right at the moment. I had a more structured question for you. Do you need a structured question, or are you happy just to talk about what you think you could do in your area? Okay, I'll give you the structured questions, then you can ignore me and do what you want. See, I have 4 kids. I understand this. It doesn't matter what you tell people, they'll do what they want. And that's why I don't have much colonialism left in me. I understand it. Just relax. It'll happen. Something will happen. So what do the kind of things I've talked about? The first thing you have to ask, what is the common thread in these things? What do you yearn for? What are you personally learning for in your religious experience? And what makes you excited? What makes you excited to think? Not many of us wake up in the morning and go, yay, is it a church day? Says it all.
I mean, yay, it's a work day.
And the last question I want you to think about is, what's the difference between faith and belief when you're doing this? It's a really important question because it conditions how you will proceed with the rest. Okay. Now, if you want to change groups, you can change groups. If you're happy where you are, just sit where you are. You've got 15 minutes to talk about this. Any questions? Okay, off you go then. How this part was for you. Did you learn something? Oh, maybe can the chat people talk to us?
Yes, they can.
Okay, chat people, do you want to say something to us? I got to talk to that group. Zoom people. Zoom. If you have something to say, go ahead. No.
Okay, I'll speak.
I know it.
No, nobody's surprised. I think a lot of what you said, especially in the last time, resonated with us. The whole conversation about baptism, ordination, and the Eucharist, and the barriers that we put up, to people feeling, and you name that, feeling like they don't dress well enough, or all kinds of reasons why people feel that they are not welcome. And one of my pet peeves is we say all are welcome, but there's nothing about who we are when people come in that would make people from who don't fit the little small mold that we fit into, that would make them feel all that welcome. So yeah, and then we had a lovely conversation about faith and belief, but we don't need to hear all that.
Okay, this group. Anything you want to say?
No?
To share with other
Well,
people?
we just had a wonderful conversation about faith and belief, and
Yeah.
are they which precedes the other, and are they more verbs and nouns kind of thing? And I guess.
And it both goes hand in hand, or if it's 2 different individual things, and how basically it applies to our church settings, especially. We both did confirmation classes, so we were discussing how it applied mostly for our younger kids and the problems we had with connecting with them and the struggles and how we kind of overcame them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. Other folks? Back here, folks on my back too. Anything you'd like to say back here? Okay, well, you're a quiet lot. I don't know whether I've stunned you into silence or what it is. One of the things to remember is that belief and faith are different things. If I believe you're going to show up at 4 o'clock, you better show up at 4:00. If I have faith in you showing up at 4:00. My late sister was chronically late. She was always late. So I would agree to meet her at noon for lunch, and I'd get there at 12:30, and she'd saunter in at 1:45. I had faith she'd come.
Excuse me.
I had no belief she'd come on time. It's really an important thing, because it's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
To believe is to think about facts. To have faith is to trust. I have faith that Jesus will be with me all the days of my life. When I was 5 years old, I was waiting for my mom doing some thing, and I was looking at the beautiful stained glass windows of this little church, and I was used to spending a lot of time with my dad in the great outdoors, and that's where I'd mostly found my spirituality. Until this day, and in this beautiful stained glass, I suddenly saw Jesus. Wow, hot damn. I didn't think hot damn, I was only 5. I said, wow. And I fell in love with him. And I'm 77 years old, and I'm still in love with the guy.
Yeah.
It's never changed for me. And I have faith in his presence within my life. Now, I don't think it's because I'm part of any cannibal feasts. I don't think it's because I say the right things. I think it's because I see Jesus so often in other people, and I feel his presence with me as I look at the poor, as I look at people yearning for belonging. So I would say belonging comes before faith. Once people feel safe and that they belong, then they can develop a faith. I want to tell you a last story. When I lived in Vancouver, I would drive past this particular overpass, and there was a woman there who was usually begging. And it's hard to tell. You know, folks who've lived rough most of their lives, you can't tell how old they are. She could have been 30, she could have been 70, hard to say. So I rolled my window down. She told me her name, which I've now forgotten. And I'd say, let's say Ruth. I'd roll my window down and say, hi, Ruth, how are you this morning? Oh, she said, not so good, not so good. It was a rough night. Or, oh, it was a great night. I found a place to sleep. It was all good. I'd give her a loonie or a toonie or a five, whatever I had to give her. She'd say, God bless you, my dear. And I felt blessed. She was a priest to me in that moment. I felt blessed. And I think that's one of the things Jesus taught me. That the world is full of things to give me, love me, to teach me. I don't have to be in charge of it. I don't have to tell people what to think. I can let the world start to show me the way. If I really believe that Jesus is in the highways and the byways, at the tables, in the hands of the little kids who hold their hands out, in the eyes of the dying as they smile and walk into their next life. It's all there, and it's a gift that I get to be part of that. If we live with that, it's a very different world than the world of doctrines and dogma, isn't it?
I just finished a project with a young person who lives in Jerusalem, travels the world in a band, a famous band, doesn't matter who, I don't want to name drop or anything. But she reached out and she lives the life of a rock star, no question about it. And we were able to work in a partnership to raise money to save a music program at Princess Basma Hospital in Jerusalem for autistic children. And the point I'm making is that I now have incredible faith that young people are actually hearing a voice that we're not hearing. And it's important for us to listen.
Thank you for that story. That's wonderful. Any other stories? By our stories, they shall know us. Tell your stories.
Yeah.
Be human. Show your wounds. Oh, I don't want to get into tomorrow's talk. Oops, I almost really messed up.
Are you doing it tomorrow?
Oh, hey, do I say you tomorrow if I have it all tonight?
No.
I thought you might be tired of it all by now. Okay, I'm done. Thanks for having me. It was great being with you. You're very responsive. Thank you.
Thank you.